Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to testify. I want to testify just as a Black American today, and I want to first start off by saying that white supremacy is indeed real, but despite the media's obsessive coverage of it, it represents an isolated, uncoordinated, and fringe occurrence within America. It's a fringe occurrence that is being used, in my opinion, by Democrats to scare Americans into giving up their votes to a party that can no longer win based on simple ideas, which is why we're seeing so many of these hearings back to back, despite other threats that are facing this nation. I want to reiterate that point. White supremacy is real, just as racism is real, but neither of these ideologies are real in this room. They have become mechanisms for the left to continue to call these hearings and to distract from much bigger issues that are facing this country and which threaten minorities. Much bigger issues that they are responsible for. White nationalism sounds a lot better as a threat than father absence. When are we going to call a hearing on the 74% of single motherhood rate in Black America today? My guess is probably never. Since Democrats are the author of that epidemic, which leaves us, Black Americans, 20 times more likely to end up in prison, 9 times more likely to drop out of high school, and 5 times more likely to lead a life in poverty and to commit crime. White nationalism also sounds a lot better than illiteracy rates. I'm assuming we're never going to call a hearing on that, which is a real epidemic that is facing Black Americans and minority Americans today. An epidemic which, by the way, has a lot closer of a tie to our nation's history of white supremacy. Slave codes in the early 19th century made it illegal for Black Americans to learn to read. Why? Because if slaves could read, they could access information. I don't believe that much has changed. On the most recent National Assessment of Educational Progress, just 17% of Black students scored proficient in reading at a 12th grade level. 83% of Blacks in America were not found proficient in reading at a 12th grade level. Are we going to have a hearing on that? Probably not. White nationalism also sounds a lot better than abortion as a threat, which has resulted in the slaughter of 18 million Black Americans since 1973 and points to a bigger crisis, which is the fact that the Black population growth has stagnated in this country. The crisis that in major cities like in New York, we have more Black babies that are being aborted than born alive. If we're talking about preserving lives and we're talking about white supremacy, we should probably have a conversation about that. But today, in this room, we're going to see Democrats try to connect the dots to white supremacy and the internet. So the question is why? So that people who have absolutely nothing to do with propagating white supremacy are censored, silenced, and controlled. What they are actually after is our permission to censor and silence and control any dissenting voices that go against the mainstream narrative that they wish to propagate. To give a glimpse into just how absurd and expansive the definition of white supremacy has become, I offer to the committee that I have been libeled and smeared by Democrat media cohorts as someone who supports white supremacy. You need but look at me to determine that that just isn't true. Why? Because I routinely say, Black people don't have to be Democrats. I am now considered somebody that is radicalizing people on the internet. What a radical idea. Black people waking up to the abuses and the Democrat Party, which has been instigated upon Black America over the last 60 years. There have been sincere attempts, just so everybody knows, to censor me on social media because I am radical. YouTube once censored me for criticizing Black Lives Matter. They reversed the censorship and they apologized and they called it a mistake. Facebook once censored me for calling out liberal supremacy as a threat facing Black America. What I said specifically was that in any community where liberal policies reign supreme, you will find that Black America is hurting. I stand by that assessment. Facebook reversed my censorship, apologized, and claimed it was a mistake. Of course, I'm fortunate that I have a big enough platform that when I get branded something extreme, I can reverse it, but the majority of Americans don't have that platform. The majority of Americans with dissenting opinions are silenced forever. Many words which have once held very serious meanings have come to take on a different definition over the last couple of years as Democrats have desperately tried to grapple with the fact that they are no longer able to manipulate Americans with broad claims and broad strokes of racism, sexism, misogyny, and the like. Words like racism, which today most nearly means anything or anyone that disagrees with a liberal, and terms like white nationalism, which today and in this room and upon this floor most nearly means that it's election time, America. It's time for the left to do what they do best: divide, distract, and hope to keep their most important voting bloc to their party, which is Black Americans, angry and emotional and reactive enough to keep voting for the same party that has systematically destroyed our families, sent our men to prison, and deferred all of our dreams. I would close out by telling you that this is not going to work. America, and more importantly, Black America, is waking up to the ploy. The bad acting, the faux concern, these hearings, it's not going to stop Black America from breaking the chains of victimhood, and it's certainly not going to stop me from being one of the loudest voices against it. Thank you. And he just kept on telling it all around the country, dropping bars. Honestly, Trump might be my favorite rapper right now. My favorite moment of his campaign was he said, "Only Rosie O'Donnell, only Rosie O'Donnell." Only our 45th president, Donald J. Trump, and I'm going to tell you what I love about him. I get that question all the time, Candace. What do you love about Donald Trump? What I love about Donald Trump most is his audacity. The audacity that it took to stand up and look Black America in the eye. The audacity that it takes to call out these crooked Black Democrat politicians that have received billions in aid from our government and effectively stolen it from the struggling cities that they represent. The audacity to call out Elijah Cummings, the audacity to call out Maxine Waters, who lives, by the way, in a $6 million home outside of her own district. President Donald Trump has both the spine and the audacity to save Black America. It takes a lot of guts, and we all know this. When you wake up as a Black American and you realize the truth and you have the courage to speak out about it, the racist leftist media will attack you. CNN is a racist network, in my opinion. I've watched them over the past year sanction the violence of Antifa against Black conservatives. They have referred to all of us last year in this same exact room. CNN referred to all of us as paid puppets. They said we were paid to be in this room. Because they cannot fathom that we would ever have the courage to stand up and to tell them no more. No more victim narrative, CNN. No more victim narrative, MSNBC. No more telling us that we cannot do something because of the color of our skin. No more fear politics. No more attempts to scare us into voting for you. No more lies. No more half-truths. They attack the one president that has done the absolute most for Black America than any president in American history because they are scared. And I'll tell you what they're scared of. They are scared of no longer being able to control us. They are scared that we are actually waking up to everything that they have done to us. It was Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, in 1991 who warned us against what the Democrats and the media would do to Black people like us. This is what he said, quote, "This is a circus. It's a national disgrace, and from my standpoint as a Black American, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity Blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas, and it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, you will be destroyed, you will be caricatured, rather than hung from a tree." How right was Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas in the treatment of Black Americans today? It is a national disgrace. But let them continue. Let them continue their attacks on free-thinking Blacks. It's not going to stop us in any way from supporting this administration, from supporting people like our honorable Vice President, Mike Pence, who is finally talking about God again on the national stage. President Trump views us as Americans. And the answer, of course, to that question is that we had absolutely nothing to lose from taking a chance on him, and now we're winning. We want Trump. We want the victor narrative. We want opportunities. We want to be viewed as Americans first and foremost. And you know, I rarely give him credit, but maybe former President Barack Obama said it best in his Harvard Law School paper when he wrote, "The American dream is to be like Donald Trump." We want the American dream. Thank you guys so much for being here, and get ready to see the man himself. people won't be familiar with, not a name that spread all across the nation instantly. Tyshawn Lee was a 9-year-old boy living in Chicago. He left his grandmother's house because he wanted to go play basketball in the park, and he was playing basketball by himself in the park. Tyshawn Lee was approached by an adult man who came up to him playfully and grabbed the ball and began playing with him. And then eventually this older adult man lured him away from the park with the promise that he would take him to the store and buy him whatever he wanted. So he followed this adult man into an alleyway, and he was instantly, Tyshawn Lee at 9 years old, shot point blank a few times and murdered. He was murdered. It was gang related. They were after his father, so this was a gang hit to go after this young boy. Disaster, an absolute sad disaster that brought tears to my eyes because he was only in the 4th grade. You know, unbeknownst to most of this world, this story happened, and the reason that we don't know about it, the reason that there was no wall-to-wall coverage and national sensation about this story by the people who claim to care about the senseless ending of Black lives is simply because it didn't fit the media narrative. That's it. He was killed by another Black man, so it didn't fit the media narrative to be outraged about this story. Black on Black crime is something that our media tells us that we're not allowed to talk about. Over 93% of Black homicide victims are killed by other Black people. We are not supposed to be outraged, and we're not told to remember the names of those victims. Because if we begin to focus on that area,